Tonight, the sun is setting over ancient Greece. The marble temples still glow beneath the last golden light, but our journey does not lead toward philosophers or kings. Instead, we quietly step through the wooden door of an ordinary family home, where another kind of history waits. Here, behind whitewashed walls, husbands return from long days in the marketplace. Wives finish weaving by the fading sunlight. Children chase each other across the courtyard before sleep. An oil lamp flickers to life as evening gently settles over the household. These are the moments history rarely records. Not great battles, not famous speeches, but shared meals, soft smiles, comforting embraces, whispered conversations before sleep. Tonight, we will discover how ordinary Greeks loved, married, built families, and found happiness in life's quiet routines. So settle in, let your thoughts drift with the evening breeze, and together, let's step inside an ancient Greek home. The afternoon. Sun hangs low above the rooftops of Athens, bathing the city in a warm golden glow. The sharp heat of the day has finally begun to fade, and a cool breeze slips through the narrow streets, carrying with it the comforting sense of fresh bread, olive oil, crushed herbs, and distant wood smoke. The marketplace is slowly emptying. Merchants gather their baskets of figs and olives. Potters brush dried clay from their hands before locking away their workshops. A fisherman laughs with an old friend as they part for the evening, each returning to the people waiting at home. Soon, the busy streets will belong to the shadows. But behind hundreds of quiet wooden doors, another part of ancient Greece is only just beginning to awaken. Tonight, we are not following a famous philosopher, nor a celebrated general. Our journey leads us to an ordinary husband and wife, two people whose names have long been forgotten, yet whose lives were perhaps far more familiar than those of kings and heroes, because history often remembers the men who built empires. It rarely remembers the people who quietly built homes. As we walk through the neighborhood, the houses seem almost modest, even shy. Their walls are covered with pale white plaster, worn smooth beneath years of sunshine and rain. Small windows sit high above the street, revealing almost nothing of the lives hidden inside. There are no grand marble columns, no colorful mosaics announcing wealth. From the outside, one home looks much like the next. That was no accident. To an ancient Greek family, the outside world was loud, unpredictable, and public. Home was something entirely different. Home was private. The thick wooden door before us has been opened and closed thousands of times. Children have raced through it. Friends have been welcomed across its threshold. Family members have returned here carrying both good news and difficult days. As you gently step inside, the noise of Athens begins to disappear. It is almost surprising how quickly the city falls away. The shouting merchants become distant echoes. The clatter of wooden carts fades into the background. Only the soft chirping of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves remain. Before you stretches the heart of the house. An open courtyard welcomes the evening sky. Sunlight spills across smooth stone, creating long shadows beneath clay pots overflowing with rosemary, thyme, and fragrant mint. A young olive tree stands quietly near one wall, its silver-green leaves dancing whenever the breeze wanders through. Somewhere nearby, two curious chickens inspect the ground with great determination. Whatever they are searching for must be incredibly important. Or perhaps they simply enjoy keeping everyone guessing. Around this peaceful courtyard stand the rooms where nearly every part of family life unfolds. A simple kitchen, a weaving room, storage spaces filled with baskets, jars, and folded linen. And tucked away behind another wooden doorway, the bedroom, not grand, not luxurious, but perhaps the most personal room in the entire house. Very few strangers would ever enter it, not because it contained great treasures, but because it held something even more valuable, the private life of a family, a place where laughter became quieter, where worries could finally be set aside, where husband and wife belonged only to one another after the busy world had gone to sleep. Yet before we step inside that room, another story quietly begins. Listen carefully. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Familiar. A man appears in the doorway, brushing a little dust from his sandals before entering the courtyard. His linen tunic carries the warmth of the afternoon sun, and a woven basket hangs comfortably from one arm. The day has been long. The marketplace was crowded. Customers asked endless questions. Prices were argued over far more passionately than olives probably deserve. Now, more than anything, he wishes to leave the noise behind. He pauses for only a moment. Then his eyes begin searching the courtyard. Not for the bread, not for the water jar. For her. She is sitting beneath the shade, her hands moving patiently across a wooden loom. Thread slips between her fingers with calm, practiced movements. She has woven countless pieces of cloth in her lifetime, yet every careful movement still carries quiet pride. She hears him before she sees him, not because he is loud. Quite the opposite. She simply knows the sound of his footsteps. After years together, the rhythm of his walk has become as familiar as the evening song of the birds above the courtyard. Without lifting her head immediately, the corners of her lips begin to soften into a smile. Only then does she look up. Their eyes meet. For a brief moment, neither speaks. They do not need to. Some conversations have already been spoken 1,000 times without words. He smiles first. Not the confident smile he offered customers in the marketplace. This one is different, smaller, more honest. The kind of smile reserved for the person who has seen you at your very best. And also after carrying heavy baskets all day with sore feet and a face covered in dust. She quietly returns it. The warmth in her expression says something beautifully simple. You're home. He crosses the courtyard toward her. As he passes, she reaches out almost without thinking, brushing a small crease from his shoulder where his cloak has twisted during the walk home. Her fingertips remain there for only a heartbeat, just long enough to remind him that he no longer carries the day alone. You look tired, she says with a gentle laugh. I was hoping the dust would hide it. It has failed. I suspected as much. She smiles again. So did the olives. He glances into his basket. They've betrayed me too? They're very poor secret keepers. A quiet laugh escapes them both. Nothing about the conversation would ever be remembered by historians. No poet would write verses about it. No sculptor would carve it into marble. And yet, these tiny moments may have meant more than the speeches of famous men. Because this is how most love exists. Not in grand declarations beneath moonlit balconies, but in familiar voices, gentle teasing, a hand resting briefly upon another, the comfort of returning home knowing someone has been waiting, not impatiently, not dramatically, but simply with quiet happiness. As the sun slips lower, she rises from the loom. Together they begin preparing for the evening meal. She slices fresh bread while he pours watered wine into clay cups. He carries a heavy jar across the courtyard before she has the chance to lift it herself. Neither asks, neither keeps score. After years together, kindness has become a habit rather than a favor. Soon the children will come racing through the courtyard, eager to tell impossible stories about adventures that somehow grow larger with every retelling. Neighbors will exchange greetings over nearby walls. Oil lamps will be lit. The smell of warm bread will fill the house. And later, much later, when the children have drifted into peaceful sleep and the courtyard grows silent beneath a sky crowded with stars, this simple home will become quieter still. Beyond one modest wooden door waits the room where the outside world no longer matters. A room where whispered conversations continue beneath the gentle glow of a single oil lamp. A room where tomorrow's worries can wait until morning. A room where two ordinary people, after another ordinary day, find comfort in nothing more extraordinary than being together. For now, though, evening has only just begun, and our journey into the private world of ancient Greece is only taking its very first steps. Long before they shared a home, long before they exchanged quiet smiles across a peaceful courtyard, long before they whispered to one another beneath the gentle light of an oil lamp, they were simply children. Children who had no idea that somewhere beyond the streets of Athens, another life was slowly waiting for them. If you could travel backward 20 years, you would find the little girl sitting beside her mother in almost the very same courtyard we visited before. The morning sun has barely climbed above the rooftops. Birds sing from nearby olive trees. The smell of warm bread fills the air. She is trying very hard to help. Unfortunately, her version of helping involves dropping half the wool onto the floor. Her mother watches with a patient smile. It seems the wool wishes to escape. I was letting it stretch. Of course you were. The little girl grins proudly, completely convinced that this explanation makes perfect sense. Perhaps it does. Her mother kneels beside her, gathering the soft white fibers into a basket once again. There, she says gently. Now we begin together. Small hands copy larger hands. The movements are clumsy at first. Thread slips away. Knots appear where they should not. Every few minutes, the little girl looks up, hoping her mother has noticed her progress. She always has, not because the work is perfect, but because every mistake is another lesson. In ancient Greece, daughters often learned by watching. No classroom, no written timetable, no examinations waiting at the end of the season. The household itself became their school. How to spin wool, how to weave linen, how to prepare bread, how to care for younger brothers and sisters, how to keep a home running through every season of the year. These were not simply chores. They were skills that would one day help build another household. One that did not yet exist. One she could hardly imagine. Across the city, another child begins his morning. A young boy races through the courtyard carrying a wooden stick twice his own height. Today it is not a stick. Today it is a mighty spear. Yesterday it was probably a fishing rod. Tomorrow it may become a dragon. Childhood has always possessed remarkable confidence. His father watches with quiet amusement. Careful, mighty warrior. I've already defeated 3 Persians. You've defeated 3 chickens. They were dangerous chickens. His father laughs. I believe you. The family dog appears entirely unconvinced. Soon enough, play gives way to lessons. Unlike his sister, much of the boy's education will gradually lead beyond the walls of the home. If his family can afford it, he may learn reading, writing, music, and poetry from teachers. He will exercise his growing body, learn discipline, practice speaking clearly, listen carefully to stories of heroes whose courage he dreams of matching someday. Yet even these lessons are not simply about becoming strong. They are preparing him to become a husband, a father, a citizen, someone capable of providing for a family of his own. Neither child realizes it. Neither needs to. For now, there are games to play, bread to steal while it cools, questions to ask that leave every adult searching for an answer, and afternoons that seem as though they might last forever. Years pass quietly. The little girl grows taller. The loom no longer feels enormous beneath her hands. She weaves with calm confidence now, her fingers moving almost without thought. Sometimes she catches her mother watching, not correcting, simply smiling. Pride has a wonderfully quiet voice. The young boy has changed as well. His shoulders broaden. His childhood games slowly disappear beneath real responsibilities. His father begins taking him to the marketplace more often. There he learns how people bargain, how promises are made, how honesty earns trust more slowly than clever words, but lasts much longer. As evening approaches, father and son often walk home together through the crowded streets. One day, his father says quietly, "This work will become yours." The young man nods. He has imagined adventure. He has imagined glory. He has imagined distant lands beyond the sea. But now another future slowly takes shape. A smaller future, quieter one. A home, family, someone waiting behind a familiar wooden door. Meanwhile, the young woman sometimes pauses while filling clay jars at the neighborhood fountain. Other families gather there too. Neighbors exchange news. Children chase one another around the stone basin. Older women laugh over stories they have told 100 times before. She occasionally notices young men passing through the streets. Some are loud. Some are proud. Some try just a little too hard to appear impressive. She quickly returns her attention to the water. This is not a love story. At least, not yet. In classical Athens, young women and young men often had surprisingly little opportunity to know one another before marriage. Modern romance would have seemed unfamiliar. There were no long walks together beneath the stars. No secret letters tucked beneath flower pots. Certainly no evenings spent arguing over where to eat dinner. Their paths crossed only briefly. A glance across a festival. A familiar face seen at a family gathering. A respectful greeting during a religious celebration. That might be all. And yet, human hearts have always been wonderfully curious. Perhaps she wonders who he is. Perhaps he notices her kindness while she helps an elderly neighbor carry a heavy basket. Perhaps they never speak. Not because affection is forbidden, but because life follows different customs than our own. Love, in ancient Greece, often arrived after marriage rather than before it. Not always, but often. It grew quietly through ordinary mornings, shared meals, children's laughter, long conversations after difficult days. The deepest roots sometimes take the longest to appear. Neither of them knows it now. The young woman returns home beneath the evening sky. The young man follows his father through the marketplace one last time before sunset. Each believes tomorrow will look very much like today. But somewhere beyond their ordinary routines, their families have already begun thinking about the future. A future that may one day bring two strangers together beneath the same roof. Not because fate has written a grand romance, but because two households are slowly preparing to become one. And with that, another chapter of their story quietly begins. The years pass more quietly than anyone notices. One summer becomes another. Children become adults almost by accident. The little girl who once tangled wool between her fingers now moves gracefully around the loom. weaving linen so neatly that her mother rarely needs to correct a single stitch. The boy who once declared victory over imaginary armies now stands beside his father in the marketplace, speaking with customers in a calm, confident voice. Life has changed, and with it, so have the conversations inside their homes. One evening, after supper has ended and the children have drifted into their own corners of the house, her father sits beside the courtyard, turning a small clay cup slowly between his hands. His wife joins him. For a while, neither speaks. The warm evening air carries the scent of jasmine climbing along the courtyard wall. An oil lamp flickers gently between them, its soft light dancing across the whitewashed walls. Finally, he breaks the silence. She isn't a little girl anymore. His wife smiles. No, it happened rather quickly. It always does. For a moment, they simply listen to the peaceful sounds of their home. Their daughter is humming softly while folding fresh linen inside. The melody drifts through the doorway like a familiar friend. His wife glances toward the room. She'll make someone a wonderful wife. I know. He says it with pride, but also with something else. Something every parent understands. Because loving a child means knowing that one day they will build a life that no longer depends entirely upon you. Across the city, another family is having a remarkably similar conversation. The young man's mother watches him repairing a wooden stool in the courtyard. He has become patient. His father nods. He listens before speaking. He works hard, and he laughs easily. His mother smiles knowingly. The girls will notice that. His father chuckles. I hope one notices before I become too old to carry grandchildren. His wife gently nudges his shoulder. You've already started dreaming. I have, and I rather enjoy it. The truth is, marriage in ancient Greece was rarely left to chance. It was not usually the result of two young people falling deeply in love after months of courtship. Instead, it often began with conversations much like these. Parents spoke with relatives. Friends quietly recommended respectable families. Reputations mattered. Character mattered. The ability to provide for a household mattered. A marriage was not simply joining two people. It was joining two families. One afternoon, while the marketplace hums with its usual energy, two fathers find themselves walking together beneath the shade of a colonnade. They already know one another. Athens is not an enormous city. Good reputations travel surprisingly fast. So, one finally says, I hear your son has become an excellent craftsman. The other smiles modestly. He still has much to learn, as we all do. A comfortable silence follows. Then comes the question both men knew was quietly approaching. And your daughter? She is kind. She weaves beautifully. More importantly, he pauses. She has a gentle heart. The other man nods thoughtfully. There is no dramatic negotiation, no shouting, no clever speeches worthy of the theater. Only two fathers speaking about the futures of the children they love. In time, their wives join the conversation. Questions are asked. Families are considered. A dowry is discussed with careful respect. To modern ears, this may sound cold, almost like arranging a business agreement. But the reality is more complicated. Marriage certainly involved practical concerns. How would the couple live? Could they support children? Would both families be respected? These questions mattered deeply. Yet beneath them rested something wonderfully hopeful. Every parent wished to see their son or daughter cared for, to enter a household where kindness was possible. where tomorrow might be a little brighter than yesterday. Meanwhile, the young woman knows very little about these conversations. She notices only that her mother has become slightly more thoughtful lately. Sometimes she catches her parents smiling at one another after visitors leave. Other times they ask gentle questions about the future. Do you enjoy weaving? Yes. Would you like children one day? She blushes. I suppose so. Her mother smiles warmly. There is no wrong answer. The young woman laughs softly. I hope they're less mischievous than my brothers. Her mother raises an eyebrow. You were hardly innocent yourself. I don't remember that. I do. Across the city, the young man experiences something similar. His father begins asking curious questions during their walks home. What do you think makes a good husband? The young man considers this carefully. Someone who works hard. His father nods. What else? Someone his family can depend on. And the young man smiles. I suspect you're looking for another answer. I may be. He thinks for another moment. Someone who is kind. His father smiles with quiet satisfaction. That is the answer I hoped you would find. Neither realizes how close the future has become. One spring afternoon, during a religious festival, their paths cross for only a brief moment. She walks beside her mother carrying a small basket of flowers. He stands nearby with his father among the gathering crowd. Their eyes meet, only for a heartbeat. She lowers hers politely. He offers the smallest respectful smile before looking away. No words are exchanged. No music suddenly swells from nowhere. No poet hiding behind a column gasps at the beginning of an unforgettable romance. History, fortunately, is usually much quieter than that. But perhaps, just perhaps, each carries home the memory of a familiar face seen beneath the warm spring sunlight. A face that somehow feels kind. Sometimes that is enough. Within weeks, the families reach their decision. The marriage will take place. Preparations begin almost immediately. Linen is woven. Jewelry is carefully polished. Friends and relatives offer congratulations. The young woman sits quietly in the courtyard that evening, watching the first stars appear overhead. Her mother joins her. Are you frightened? A little. That's perfectly natural. What if he doesn't like me? Her mother smiles gently. My dear. She reaches for her daughter's hand. A good marriage is rarely built in a single day. It grows, slowly, like an olive tree. It needs patience, kindness, and two people willing to care for it. The young woman nods quietly. She looks toward the stars again. Somewhere beneath this same evening sky, the young man is sitting beside his father. Neither speaks very much. There are moments in life when silence carries every thought words cannot. Tomorrow, preparations will continue. Soon, torchlight will fill the streets. Music will echo through Athens. One home will say goodbye. Another will open its door. And two ordinary strangers will begin discovering that sometimes the greatest love stories are not the ones that begin with passion, but the ones that slowly learn how to love. The day begins long before the sun rises above the hills of Athens. Inside the bride's family home, the courtyard is already alive with quiet excitement. Her mother has barely slept. Neither has she. Not because the house is noisy, but because some mornings arrive carrying the weight of an entire lifetime. Today is one of them. A soft knock comes at her bedroom door. It's time. She opens her eyes slowly. For just a moment, she lies perfectly still, listening to the peaceful silence around her. This is the room where she learned to weave beside her mother, where she whispered stories with her sisters long after everyone else had gone to sleep, where she watched sunlight dance across the white walls every morning since childhood. Tonight, she will sleep somewhere else. A strange thought, a beautiful one, and perhaps a frightening one as well. Her mother enters carrying a folded linen dress. Simple, elegant, freshly woven by loving hands. "You hardly slept," her mother says with a gentle smile. "I kept thinking." "So did I." They laugh quietly together. Outside, the courtyard slowly fills with the comforting sounds of family preparing for the celebration. Fresh bread is baked before sunrise. Olives are carefully arranged inside painted bowls. Honey is poured into small clay dishes. Neighbors arrive carrying flowers, wine, and warm congratulations. One elderly aunt appears to have brought enough food to feed half of Athens. Nobody complains. There is no such thing as too much bread at a Greek wedding. The bride sits patiently upon a wooden stool while her mother brushes her long dark hair. Each slow stroke seems to calm her racing thoughts. "You look beautiful. I feel nervous. I would worry if you weren't." Her mother gently places a hand upon her shoulder. "You are not leaving us. You are simply beginning another home." The young woman nods, although her eyes have become suspiciously shiny. Perhaps the dust is to blame. Across the city, another household wakes just as early. The groom is standing in the courtyard attempting to look calm. He is failing rather magnificently. His father notices immediately. "You've worn a path into the stone." "I have. You've walked across this courtyard at least 20 times." "I wasn't counting." "I was." His father smiles warmly. "Nervous?" "A little." His mother appears carrying his freshly cleaned cloak. "A little," he sighs. "Very." She gently adjusts the folds of his tunic. "There. You suddenly look like a respectable husband." "I wasn't before?" "You looked like a young man who forgot how to breathe." His father laughs loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Thankfully, laughter is considered good luck. As the afternoon slowly slips toward evening, guests begin gathering. Children weave between adults, chasing one another through the courtyard until someone reminds them not to trip over the bread. Musicians tune their lyres. Friends pour watered wine into waiting cups. Older relatives exchange stories about weddings that happened many years before. Most of the stories become slightly more impressive every time they are told. Memory has always enjoyed improving the details. The bride quietly watches everything from beneath the shaded courtyard. Every familiar face carries both happiness and a little sadness. She knows why. By tomorrow morning, this house will no longer be her home. One by one, friends embrace her. Her younger sister refuses to let go for a very long time. "I shall visit." "You promise." "I promise. And you'll tell me if married life is frightening." The bride laughs through happy tears. "I suspect you'll discover for yourself one day." As the sun finally begins disappearing behind the hills, the celebration changes. Oil lamps are lit around the courtyard. Then come the torches. One after another, tiny flames awaken against the gathering darkness. The entire house begins glowing with warm golden light. Outside, the streets of Athens slowly fill with neighbors watching the procession. The musicians begin to play. Their melodies drift through the evening air, gentle and joyful without becoming hurried. The groom arrives surrounded by friends and family. For the first time that day, his eyes search only for one person. Then he sees her, standing beneath the torchlight. Her white linen catches the soft golden glow of the flames, almost seeming to shine beneath the evening sky. For just a moment, the busy world disappears. She looks toward him. He smiles, not boldly, not proudly, simply with quiet admiration. She returns the smile. Perhaps they are still strangers in many ways, but tonight, they are taking the first step toward becoming something entirely different. The procession begins. Together they walk through the streets beneath hundreds of dancing shadows. Friends laugh. Children carry tiny lamps far too proudly. Neighbors call out blessings as the couple passes. Above them, the first stars quietly appear. It is a beautiful evening, not because of luxury, not because of wealth, but because every face around them belongs to someone wishing them happiness. When they finally arrive at his home, the wooden door stands open. The courtyard beyond is softly illuminated by waiting oil lamps. Everything feels familiar to him. Everything feels wonderfully unfamiliar to her. She pauses, only for a heartbeat. He notices. Without speaking, he quietly offers his hand. She looks at it, then gently places her own inside. His fingers are warm, steady, comforting. The gesture lasts only a moment before they continue walking. Yet somehow, it eases her anxious heart. Inside, another meal has been prepared. Bread, cheese, olives, fish, fresh fruit, honey cakes. Laughter fills the courtyard long into the evening as friends celebrate the beginning of a new household. Stories are shared. Wine is poured. Music continues beneath the stars. Eventually, the guests begin saying their farewells. One by one, the voices grow quieter. The musicians pack away their instruments. The torches burn lower. The courtyard slowly empties until only silence remains. For the first time all day, they are alone. The oil lamp inside their bedroom casts a warm circle of light across the simple room. A sturdy wooden bed rests against the wall. A small chest holds neatly folded linen. A polished bronze mirror catches the flicker of the flame. Nothing here is grand. Nothing here needs to be. She steps inside slowly, taking in the room that will now become part of her daily life. "It feels different," she whispers. "It does." He smiles gently. "I was thinking exactly the same." She looks at him, surprised. "But you've lived here all your life." "Yes." He glances around the quiet room. "But until tonight, it wasn't our home." She smiles. A real smile this time. The nervousness has not disappeared. Neither has his. But something else has quietly arrived. Hope. Outside, Athens continues sleeping beneath a sky full of stars. Inside, two ordinary people begin learning the slow, beautiful rhythm of sharing a life. Not built in a single evening. Not created by grand romance. But by tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, by countless shared sunsets, gentle laughter, patient understanding, and the quiet promise that, from this night forward, neither of them will have to face the world alone. The celebration has finally come to an end. The laughter that filled the courtyard only an hour ago has faded into the warm night air. Friends have returned to their own homes. The musicians have carried away their lyres. Even the last torch outside the doorway has burned low, leaving only a quiet trail of fragrant smoke drifting toward the stars. Ancient Athens has become wonderfully still. Only the occasional bark of a distant dog or the gentle chorus of crickets reminds you that the city is still awake somewhere beyond these whitewashed walls. Inside the house, an oil lamp flickers softly. Its golden light dances across the courtyard before slipping through a half-open doorway. This is the room we have been quietly approaching since the beginning of our journey. The bedroom, not a palace chamber decorated with marble and gold, not the extravagant room imagined by countless films. Just a simple space where two ordinary people could finally leave the busy world behind. As you step inside, the first thing you notice is how peaceful it feels. The walls are smooth, coated with pale plaster that catches the warm glow of the lamp. Shadows move gently across them like waves upon a quiet sea. There are no grand paintings, no towering furniture, no endless collection of belongings. Everything inside the room has a purpose. Against one wall stands a sturdy wooden bed. It is built from simple timber, carefully joined by the hands of a local craftsman. Across its frame, strong woven ropes stretch tightly from one side to the other, creating a flexible support beneath the mattress. It is a clever design, simple, practical, comfortable enough after a long day spent walking dusty roads or working beneath the Mediterranean sun. The mattress itself is filled with wool. It is softer than many people imagine, especially when covered with freshly woven linen. A folded wool blanket rests neatly at the foot of the bed, ready for the cooler nights of winter, while lighter linen sheets offer comfort during the warmth of summer. Beside the bed sits a small wooden chest. Inside are carefully folded tunics, extra blankets, treasured pieces of jewelry, and perhaps a few keepsakes collected over the years. Unlike modern wardrobes overflowing with clothes that somehow never seem to include the one thing we wish to wear, every garment here has earned its place. Nothing is wasted. Near the chest stands a polished bronze mirror. Its reflection is never perfectly clear. Instead, it offers a gentle image softened by the flickering light of the oil lamp. Beside it rests a small clay jar filled with fragrant olive oil. Another holds perfume scented with rose, myrtle, or lavender. A simple wooden comb lies nearby, its teeth worn smooth through years of careful use. These are quiet luxuries, not signs of wealth, but small comforts that make everyday life a little more beautiful. The room carries a faint fragrance: fresh linen, warm olive oil, dry cedar wood, and the sweet scent of herbs hanging from the ceiling beams. Nothing here feels overwhelming. Everything invites rest. Outside, the moon climbs higher above the courtyard. Inside, the newly married couple quietly enters the room together. For a moment, they simply stand in silence. The celebrations of the day suddenly feel very far away. She slowly removes the delicate wreath that rested upon her hair during the ceremony, placing it carefully beside the bronze mirror. He sets the oil lamp upon a small wooden stool. The gentle flame fills the room with warm amber light. "It feels quieter than I imagined," she whispers. He smiles. "I think the house has been waiting for everyone else to leave." She laughs softly. "So it could finally belong to us? For tonight?" "Yes." His answer is simple, yet it somehow makes the room feel even warmer. They sit together on the edge of the wooden bed, not speaking immediately. There has been enough conversation for one day. Instead, they simply listen. The wind moving through the courtyard, leaves rustling outside, a distant owl greeting the night. She glances around the room once more. "It isn't grand." "No, it doesn't need to be." He nods. "Everything important is already here." She looks toward him. "And what would that be?" He smiles gently. "You." A faint blush warms her cheeks. "That sounded much more poetic than you usually speak." I've had an unusually memorable day. She laughs again, the sound barely louder than the flickering flame beside them. Perhaps this is what surprises us most about ancient Greek bedrooms. They were never designed to impress strangers. No guest was expected to admire the furniture. No traveler would write stories about the decoration. The bedroom belonged only to those who shared it. It was a place where titles mattered very little. A merchant stopped being a merchant. A craftsman's work remained outside. The endless conversations of the marketplace disappeared behind a closed wooden door. Here, husband and wife could simply become two people sharing the quiet ending of another day. They speak about the celebration, about her younger sister crying before the procession, about his father pretending not to become emotional, about the children who somehow managed to chase each other around the courtyard without knocking over a single oil lamp. "It was close," he admits. "I noticed. I nearly caught one. You nearly caught yourself. I prefer my version. I thought you might." Another smile, another quiet laugh. These small moments may seem ordinary, yet historians often remind us that affection inside ancient marriages was likely expressed in ways much like these. Not always through dramatic declarations, but through companionship, shared responsibilities, gentle teasing, a reassuring hand resting over another. The confidence that comes from slowly learning another person's heart. As the lamp burns lower, the room grows even softer. He reaches for her hand. She does not hesitate. Their fingers gently intertwine. No audience watches. No poet hides behind the doorway waiting to turn the moment into a famous verse. History will never record this quiet gesture. And perhaps that is exactly what makes it beautiful. Because this room was never meant for history. It was meant for life. For evenings spent talking until sleep quietly interrupted the conversation. For comforting one another after difficult days. For dreaming of children who might one day race through the very same courtyard. For growing older together beneath the same roof. Outside, mighty Athens continues to shape philosophy, politics, and the future of the ancient world. Inside this simple bedroom, another future is taking shape. One built not from marble or monuments, but from trust, patience, kindness, and the quiet closeness shared by two ordinary people at the end of an ordinary day. The oil lamp flickers one final time. Its flame grows smaller. The room settles into peaceful darkness. Beyond the window, the stars continue their slow journey across the Greek sky. Tomorrow, life will begin again. The marketplace will grow noisy. Bread will be baked. Children will laugh. Neighbors will exchange greetings across the courtyard walls. But for now, the world can wait until morning. Morning arrives quietly. The first rays of sunlight slip over the rooftops of Athens and into the little courtyard, painting long golden lines across the stone floor. Somewhere beyond the walls, a rooster proudly announces a victory that no one remembers asking him to achieve. The city is waking once again. Inside the house, however, the day begins much more gently. She is already awake, not because she must be, but because the cool morning hours are often the most peaceful. She steps into the courtyard carrying a small clay jug, filling a basin with fresh water before the day's warmth settles over the city. A few moments later, she hears a familiar sound. Footsteps, still a little sleepy, still unmistakably his. She smiles before turning around. "You are awake early," she says. He stretches his arms with a quiet yawn. "I could blame the rooster. You always blame the rooster. It has become a tradition." She laughs softly. I think he blames you too. It is a small conversation, forgettable to almost everyone. Yet it is these ordinary moments that slowly build a marriage. Modern stories often imagine that ancient Greek marriages were cold arrangements between strangers who simply shared the same roof. The truth is far more human. Yes, many marriages were arranged by families. Yes, practical concerns such as reputation, property, and children played an important role. But that does not mean affection was absent. Quite the opposite. Ancient writers, plays, letters, and household traditions suggest that many couples grew deeply attached over time. Love was often something that matured quietly, shaped by shared experiences rather than dramatic beginnings. Perhaps that is why it could become so enduring. Each morning they learned a little more about one another. He discovered that she hummed while kneading bread. She discovered that he always forgot where he placed his sandals. There beside the door, she calls. I was checking. You've checked 3 times. I enjoy being thorough. You enjoy pretending you weren't looking. He grins. I married a very observant woman. You certainly did. If an archaeologist uncovered this conversation, it would probably seem rather unimportant. Thankfully, archaeologists rarely excavate jokes. As the morning continues, they work together. She prepares the day's meal while he repairs a loose wooden stool that has wobbled for nearly a month. I was beginning to think you liked it that way, she says. I wanted to make sure it truly needed fixing. It nearly threw my mother onto the floor yesterday. Then today feels like the right time. She raises an eyebrow. What remarkable timing. He laughs. Even in ancient Greece, some household repairs apparently followed their own mysterious calendar. Life inside an ordinary home depended upon cooperation. Although husbands and wives often had different responsibilities, their lives were closely connected. When one struggled, the other noticed. When one celebrated, both smiled. When difficult seasons arrived, they faced them together. Some evenings were filled with conversation, others with comfortable silence. Both had their place. As the weeks became months, they slowly created little traditions that belonged only to them. Every evening he stopped at the marketplace before returning home. Sometimes he brought fresh figs, sometimes olives, sometimes nothing more than wildflowers growing beside the road. They're not very expensive, he says one evening. They're beautiful. I thought they reminded me of you. She looks at the tiny bundle of flowers. You do realize they grow almost everywhere? I was hoping you wouldn't know that. She laughs so warmly that even he begins laughing at his own failed attempt at romance. It was still a lovely thought. I shall remember that. You may also remember to buy bread next time. His eyes widen. I forgot the bread. I know. The flowers distracted me. I noticed. Can flowers become bread? She smiles mischievously. I admire your optimism. Little by little, these ordinary days become something extraordinary. Not because every moment is perfect, but because they are shared. Of course, marriage was not without its challenges. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, long days that left both of them tired. Ancient Greek homes, especially those of ordinary families, were busy places. Children cried. Neighbors visited. Work never seemed completely finished. Privacy was precious because it was often difficult to find. Perhaps that is why the quiet hours after sunset became so meaningful. When the courtyard finally grew still, when the children drifted to sleep, when only the soft glow of an oil lamp remained, the world seemed wonderfully small. They often sat together before retiring for the night. Sometimes they spoke about practical things: the olive harvest, the price of grain, whether the roof might need repairing before winter. Other evenings, their conversation wandered somewhere entirely different. "Do you ever miss your father's house?" he asks one night. She thinks for a moment. "Sometimes. You should visit more often." "I will." She looks toward the stars above the open courtyard. "But this feels like home now." He says nothing. Instead, he reaches across the bench and gently takes her hand. Some answers are better offered through kindness than words. She rests her head lightly against his shoulder. The night is calm. The air smells faintly of olive trees and cooling stone. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays softly from another neighborhood. Perhaps another family is also ending the day together. Perhaps another couple is sharing the same quiet peace. History often tells us about wars that changed kingdoms, speeches that shaped governments, victories remembered for centuries. Yet most people who lived in ancient Greece experienced history very differently. Their greatest triumphs were deeply personal: a healthy child, a successful harvest, a roof that kept out the winter rain, a marriage built upon patience instead of pride, a home where laughter returned even after difficult days. These were the victories that truly mattered. As the evening grows later, the oil lamp begins burning lower. Its warm light softens every corner of the room. She quietly stands and begins folding the blankets for the night. He moves to help. "I can manage." "I know." "Then why are you helping?" He smiles. "Because I prefer finishing the day beside you rather than watching from across the room." She looks at him for a moment. "You still surprise me." "I hope I always will." She reaches for his hand once more. "That," she says softly, "would be a wonderful thing." Outside, the city of Athens slowly surrenders to sleep. Inside one ordinary home, another ordinary day comes to a peaceful end. No poets are watching. No statues will ever be carved to remember these moments. But perhaps they are the truest picture of love in ancient Greece. Not loud, not perfect, simply two people choosing, day after day, to build a life together. And sometimes, that quiet choice is the greatest romance of all. By the time the sun begins its slow descent toward the western hills, the rhythm of the household has gently changed. The busiest work of the day is over. The bread has been baked. The water jars have been filled. The courtyard, so lively beneath the afternoon sun, now settles into a peaceful calm as long shadows stretch across the stone floor. A cool breeze carries the scent of olive trees through the open roof of the courtyard. It is the kind of evening that invites people to slow down. Inside the house, she carefully folds the last piece of woven linen and places it inside a cedar chest. For the first time since sunrise, there is nowhere she needs to hurry. She exhales quietly. Perhaps every civilization has understood this feeling. That gentle moment when the day finally releases its hold on your shoulders. Across the courtyard, her husband finishes tying a loose rope that supports a climbing vine. He notices her watching him. "Finished already?" She smiles. "I've been waiting for you." He brushes the dust from his hands. "I hope I wasn't keeping you waiting too long." "A little. And now you've arrived." He laughs softly. "I shall try to be earlier tomorrow." "You said that yesterday. And one day I'll be right." Their laughter drifts gently through the courtyard before disappearing into the evening breeze. Small conversations like these rarely survive in history, but perhaps they happened far more often than the great speeches we still remember. As twilight settles over the house, she begins the quiet ritual that marks the end of another day. Unlike the grand public bathhouses that later became famous in Roman cities, most Greek families enjoyed much simpler routines at home. A servant, if the family had one, may have warmed water over a small fire. Otherwise, the task belonged to the household itself. She pours warm water from a painted clay jug into a bronze basin. Steam rises gently into the cooling air. She washes away the dust collected during the long day. The fine powder carried by the streets of Athens disappears beneath the water, leaving behind skin cooled after hours beneath the Mediterranean sun. Nearby rests a small flask of olive oil. To the Greeks, olive oil was far more than food. It softened the skin, protected it from the dry climate, left behind a gentle glow after washing. She pours only a few drops into her hands before smoothing it carefully across her arms. The fragrance is subtle, fresh, earthy, comforting, not unlike the olive groves that surround so much of Greece itself. Beside the basin stands a polished bronze mirror. Its reflection wavers gently beneath the light of a newly lit oil lamp. She smiles at the imperfect image. Perhaps it is kinder than a modern mirror. It has no interest in counting every tiny wrinkle or every strand of hair that refuses to cooperate. Across the room rests a small wooden box. Inside are the simple treasures of everyday beauty. A carved comb, a ribbon woven from fine linen, a tiny container of scented perfume, perhaps a little powdered cosmetic made from natural minerals. Nothing extravagant, nothing excessive. Beauty in ancient Greece often celebrated balance rather than extravagance. Health, grace, cleanliness, quiet confidence. She slowly draws the comb through her long dark hair. Each stroke untangles another memory of the day. The conversation with her neighbor, the laughter of the children, the little joke her husband made while pretending he had not forgotten the bread again. She smiles to herself. He appears quietly at the doorway. "I was wondering where you disappeared. I escaped. Should I be worried? Only if you plan on stealing my comb. I've considered it. You have very little use for it." He gently touches his short hair. "An unfortunate truth." She laughs. "I thought you might finally admit it." He steps into the room carrying 2 small cups of watered wine. "I brought peace offerings." She accepts one. "I suppose you're forgiven." Together they move back toward the courtyard. The evening sky has deepened into rich shades of violet and blue. Above them, the first stars begin appearing one by one. They sit side by side beneath the open sky. No hurry, no grand plans. Just 2 people enjoying the quiet reward that follows an honest day's work. He looks upward. "I sometimes wonder if our grandchildren will sit beneath these same stars." She follows his gaze. "I hope they do. And I hope they argue less with the rooster." She laughs. "I wouldn't count on that." Silence settles comfortably between them. Not awkward, not empty, simply peaceful. One of history's greatest misunderstandings is the belief that romance must always be dramatic. Ancient Greek poetry certainly celebrated passion. Myths told stories of gods falling hopelessly in love. Heroes crossed seas for beautiful queens. Yet ordinary life was much quieter. For most couples, affection was woven into familiar routines. Waiting for one another at sunset, sharing bread beneath the courtyard sky, bringing home wildflowers, remembering which herbs the other preferred, straightening a crooked cloak before supper, listening after a difficult day. The smallest gestures often carried the greatest meaning. As darkness deepens, she rises and lights another oil lamp. Its warm flame fills the bedroom with gentle amber light. The polished bronze mirror catches the glow, reflecting tiny dancing stars across the white walls. She carefully places her jewelry inside the wooden chest. A simple bracelet, pair of small earrings. Nothing more. Luxury was rare. Contentment was not. He watches her from the doorway. You always take great care with those. They belong to my mother. And one day, she smiles softly, they may belong to our daughter. He nods. I think she would like that. The room grows wonderfully quiet. Outside, Athens slowly drifts towards sleep. Inside, the last moments of the evening unfold at their own gentle pace. Tomorrow will bring fresh work, new conversations, unexpected challenges, perhaps another forgotten loaf of bread. But tonight, there is only the comforting glow of the lamp, the scent of olive oil and cedar wood, the peaceful hush of an ancient home, and the quiet certainty that somewhere beyond history's greatest monuments, ordinary happiness was often found in the simplest of evenings. As the flame flickers softly beside the bed, another day in ancient Greece comes to its gentle end. Night has finally settled over Athens. The lively conversations that once filled the marketplace have faded into memory. Shopkeepers have barred their doors. The last travelers hurry home beneath the moonlight, eager to arrive before the city grows completely dark. Above the rooftops, thousands of stars quietly reveal themselves. Without electric lights, the ancient sky feels almost endless. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a pale river flowing through the heavens, brighter than most people today have ever seen. Inside the little house, the courtyard rests beneath cool silver moonlight. The day's warmth still lingers in the stone floor, slowly releasing itself into the evening air. An oil lamp burns near the doorway. Its flame is small now, patient, unhurried, just enough light to guide the household through the last moments before sleep. The children are the first to surrender to the night. The youngest has already fallen asleep long before anyone intended. He insisted he was not tired. History suggests this may be one of humanity's oldest and least successful arguments. His older sister gently lifts the wool blanket over his shoulders. He never admits he's sleepy. Her mother smiles. He gets that from someone. Both women glance toward the father. He pretends not to notice. I heard that. We hoped you would. The family laughs quietly, careful not to wake the little boy. Soon, the children are guided to their own sleeping places. Not every family enjoyed separate bedrooms. Many ordinary households shared rooms according to the size of the home and the number of people living within it. Privacy existed, but space was precious. Children often slept close together beneath wool blankets, comforted by familiar voices drifting through the house until the final lamp was extinguished. Meanwhile, the parents remain awake just a little longer. There is something deeply comforting about the last few minutes before bed. The work has been completed. Tomorrow's responsibilities have not yet begun. For a brief while, life asks for nothing. She carefully folds the linen cloth that covered the evening meal. He checks that the front door has been secured for the night, not because danger lurks around every corner, but because peaceful sleep begins with simple routines. Returning to the bedroom, he notices she is adjusting the blankets. You always make that side smoother. She glances up with a smile. You always wrinkle it. I believe that's called sleeping. I believe it's called impossible. He laughs. I shall try to improve. You've had years, and I remain optimistic. The bedroom feels different now. During the day, it is simply another room within the house. At night, it becomes a quiet retreat. The oil lamp casts warm circles of light across the walls. The polished bronze mirror reflects tiny flashes of amber. The scent of cedar wood mingles with fresh linen and olive oil. Everything seems softer after sunset. The wooden bed waits quietly against the wall. Its woven rope foundation gently supports the wool-filled mattress, which feels surprisingly welcoming after a day spent walking stone streets and standing for hours at work. The Greeks understood that comfort did not require luxury, only thoughtful craftsmanship. She sits on the edge of the bed and slowly loosens her long hair. The evening breeze drifting through the small window lifts a few loose strands. He watches quietly. What? You look peaceful. I am. So am I. Sometimes that is all either of them needs to say. Outside, somewhere beyond the courtyard walls, a dog barks once before falling silent. An owl calls from a nearby olive grove. Crickets continue their endless conversation beneath the stars. The sounds become part of the night itself. Modern homes are often filled with humming machines, glowing screens, and endless notifications demanding attention. Ancient nights were very different. Darkness was accepted. Silence was welcomed. People adjusted their lives to the natural rhythm of sunrise and sunset. When the light disappeared, rest followed. Dreams also held special meaning. Many Greeks believed dreams could carry messages from the gods or offer glimpses into the future. Some sought guidance by visiting sacred places where dreams were thought to possess healing or prophetic power. Others simply shared unusual dreams over breakfast, wondering aloud what they might mean. I dreamed about goats last night, he says suddenly. She looks amused. That sounds exciting. There were far too many goats. Were they chasing you? They were negotiating. She laughs so unexpectedly that she nearly wakes the children. Negotiating? They wanted better grazing land. And did you agree? I felt it was a very complicated discussion. She wipes a tear of laughter from her eye. You should stop eating olives so late. I blame the cheese. Naturally, history preserves many serious writings. It is a shame it rarely records dreams about argumentative goats. The lamp flickers gently. Its oil is almost gone. She reaches over to trim the wick slightly, and the flame grows smaller. The room settles into an even softer glow. He stretches comfortably beneath the linen sheet. She joins him a moment later. Pulling the light will blanket across them as the evening air grows cooler. Their hands find each other almost absent-mindedly, not as a grand romantic gesture, simply because it feels natural, comforting, familiar, the kind of habit that forms only after many evenings shared beneath the same roof. Neither speaks for a while. There is nothing left that needs saying tonight. Outside, the stars continue their slow journey across the Greek sky. Tomorrow, the marketplace will once again fill with voices. Children will chase one another through the courtyard. Bread will rise in the oven. Neighbors will exchange news across nearby walls. Life will continue exactly as it has for generations. But for these few quiet hours, the world grows wonderfully small. One peaceful room, one softly glowing lamp, one ordinary couple drifting towards sleep after another ordinary day. History often celebrates the daylight, the battles, the speeches, the triumphs witnessed by thousands. Yet perhaps the truest picture of ancient Greece is found here instead. In the quiet darkness, in the steady breathing of a sleeping household, in the comforting knowledge that, behind countless simple wooden doors across the city, thousands of ordinary families are ending their day in much the same way. The oil lamp gives one final gentle flicker. Then darkness embraces the room. Only the moon remains, watching silently over another peaceful night in ancient Greece. The seasons turn almost without anyone noticing. Spring flowers bloom along the hills outside Athens. Summer brings long afternoons filled with warm sunshine and the scent of olive trees. Autumn fills storage jars with fresh oil and grain. Winter arrives quietly, wrapping the city in cool mornings and evenings spent close to the hearth. Life moves gently forward, and somewhere within the quiet rhythm of ordinary days, another hope begins to grow. Not announced by trumpets, not recorded by poets, only carried silently inside the heart of a young wife who pauses one morning beneath the courtyard sky, resting a hand against her stomach with a thoughtful smile. First, she tells no one. Perhaps she is only tired. Perhaps the long days have simply caught up with her. But as the weeks pass, familiar routines begin to feel different. The smell of fresh bread, once comforting, suddenly makes her wrinkle her nose. She laughs at herself. I baked it. Her husband looks puzzled. And now you don't want to eat it? I don't understand it either. He tears off a small piece and tastes it. It still tastes wonderful. I'm glad someone enjoys it. He smiles. More for me. She raises an eyebrow. That may be the wrong thing to say. I realized it halfway through. A wise observation. Their laughter echoes softly around the courtyard. Little by little, the family begins to notice the changes. Her mother watches quietly as her daughter pauses more often to rest. One afternoon, she gently reaches for her hand. Have you spoken to anyone? The young woman lowers her eyes and smiles. I think. She hesitates, almost afraid to say the words aloud. I think we're going to have a child. For a heartbeat, neither woman speaks. Then her mother's face brightens with quiet joy. She steps forward and wraps her daughter in a warm embrace. Oh, my dear, I hoped you would tell me that one day. Across the courtyard, her husband notices the two women talking together. He cannot hear their words, but he sees the tears. He sees the smiles, and suddenly, he understands. Slowly, almost uncertainly, he walks toward them. His wife looks up. She says nothing. She simply nods. His eyes widen. Truly, she nods again. This time he laughs. Not loudly, just enough for happiness to escape before he can hide it. He gently takes both of her hands. We're going to be parents. We are. For a long moment, they simply stand together in the fading afternoon light. History remembers the births of kings, the heirs of powerful families, the children who would one day command armies or rule cities. But most babies born in ancient Greece entered the world exactly like this, welcomed not by crowds, but by two ordinary people whose hearts had suddenly become much larger than they had been the day before. As the months pass, the household slowly changes. Heavy baskets become his responsibility without discussion. She reaches for one. He quietly takes it first. I can still carry it. I know. Then why? He smiles gently. Because now I'm carrying for two. She cannot help smiling back. Sometimes love is found in the smallest acts of care. Experienced women from the neighborhood begin visiting more often. They bring advice, some of it wonderfully practical, some of it wonderfully questionable. One elderly neighbor insists that eating certain herbs will ensure the baby grows strong. Another claims the child will inherit its father's stubbornness no matter what anyone eats. Her husband overhears this. "I object. You've just proved her point." His wife replies with a grin. Even he has to laugh. In ancient Greece, pregnancy was both joyful and uncertain. Without modern medicine, childbirth carried real risks for both mother and child. Because of this, families often turned to experienced midwives, women whose knowledge had been passed from one generation to the next through years of careful observation and practice. These midwives were respected members of their communities. They offered reassurance as much as practical help. They knew when to encourage, when to comfort, when simply holding a frightened mother's hand mattered more than any words. Religion also became part of the journey. Small prayers were offered within the home. A tiny household shrine might receive fresh flowers or a few drops of fragrant oil. The family quietly asked the gods to watch over mother and child, not with elaborate ceremonies, but with simple hope. Hope has always been one of humanity's oldest traditions. As her pregnancy progresses, evenings become even quieter. She tires more easily now. After supper, they often sit together beneath the courtyard sky while the air cools around them. He notices her watching the stars. "What are you thinking about?" She smiles softly. "I wonder who our child will become." He follows her gaze upward. "I hope they're kind. I hope they're curious. I hope they inherit your patience." She laughs. "I hope they inherit yours. I don't have much. You have more than you think." He reaches over and gently places his hand over hers. For a moment, neither speaks. The future suddenly feels wonderfully mysterious. Tiny life, still unseen, already deeply loved. Weeks later, the day finally arrives. The house wakes before sunrise. Messages are quietly sent for the midwife. Her mother hurries through the doorway carrying fresh linen. Neighbors offer help without needing to be asked. The courtyard, usually so peaceful, fills with anxious footsteps and whispered prayers. Her husband waits outside the room, walking, stopping, walking again. His father watches with a knowing smile. "You won't wear a hole through the floor." "I might. I did exactly the same." "You did. Your grandfather laughed at me." That thought somehow makes waiting feel a little easier. Time seems to slow. Then, a cry. Small, clear, new. The entire house freezes. For one beautiful heartbeat, no one moves. Then the midwife appears at the doorway, smiling. A healthy child. The words seem almost magical. His shoulders relax so suddenly he has to steady himself against the wall. "May I?" She nods. He steps quietly into the room. His wife looks exhausted and happier than he has ever seen her. She carefully lifts the tiny bundle wrapped in soft linen. "Come meet your child." He kneels beside the bed. The baby yawns. An impressively dramatic entrance into the world. "I think," he whispers with a smile, "they already look wiser than both of us." She laughs quietly. "I hope so." Outside, the morning sun rises over Athens. The marketplace will soon become busy once again. Merchants will argue over prices. Children will race through the streets. Life across the city will continue almost unchanged. But inside one ordinary home, everything has become wonderfully different. A new heartbeat now fills the house. A new voice will soon echo across the courtyard. And another generation of ancient Greece has quietly begun, not in a palace or a temple, but in the loving embrace of an ordinary family whose greatest hope has finally arrived. As the afternoon slowly gives way to evening, another familiar rhythm begins inside the little Greek home. The marketplace grows quieter. The workshops close their doors. Farmers return from the fields, brushing the dust from their sandals before stepping back into the comfort of their courtyards. The hardest work of the day is finished. Now comes one of life's simplest pleasures: supper. It is not a feast prepared for kings. There are no endless tables overflowing with roasted animals or mountains of exotic fruit, as modern films sometimes like to imagine. Those grand banquets certainly existed, but they belonged to the wealthy. Most families experience something much quieter, and perhaps something far more meaningful. The smell reaches you before the meal itself. Fresh bread cooling upon a wooden board. Olive oil poured into a small painted bowl. Herbs crushed beneath a stone mortar. The salty scent of cheese. Sweet figs resting beside handfuls of grapes gathered earlier that day. It is food prepared with care rather than extravagance. Inside the kitchen, she tears a warm loaf apart with practiced hands. Steam escapes into the cool evening air. Her husband quietly appears behind her, drawn less by curiosity than by the unmistakable promise of fresh bread. "I was only checking if it was ready." She smiles without turning around. "You've checked 3 times. I believe good bread deserves careful observation. I believe someone is hoping to steal the first piece. I would never." She finally turns to face him. One eyebrow slowly rises. He sighs dramatically. "I might." She breaks off a small piece and places it into his hand. "There. Now stop circling the kitchen like a hungry philosopher." He grins. "I've been promoted from merchant to philosopher. Only until supper." History may never tell us exactly how often husbands attempted to sample fresh bread before dinner, but it seems like a very human possibility. Soon, the rest of the family gathers beneath the open sky of the courtyard. The wooden table has already been prepared. Nothing about it is elaborate. A woven basket filled with bread. Bowls of olives glistening beneath a drizzle of olive oil. Soft goat's cheese. Fresh onions. A handful of herbs. Perhaps lentils cooked slowly with garlic. If fortune has smiled upon the household, there may even be grilled fish purchased from the marketplace earlier that afternoon. Seasonal vegetables complete the meal. Simple, colorful, wholesome. At one end of the table rests a clay jug filled with watered wine. This surprises many modern visitors. The ancient Greeks commonly mixed wine with water rather than drinking it undiluted. To them, heavily diluted wine accompanied conversation and meals with moderation. It was part of daily life rather than an invitation to excess. He pours 2 cups. She accepts hers with a grateful smile. The children, meanwhile, receive water. One of them eyes the adult's cups suspiciously. "When may I have wine?" "When you stop pretending vegetables are invisible." The little boy looks down at his untouched onions. "I don't think today is the day." His father laughs. A wise decision. The evening breeze slips gently through the courtyard as everyone begins eating together. There is no rush. No one checks the time. No glowing screen demands attention. The meal unfolds at its own gentle pace. Conversation drifts as naturally as the wind. Her husband tears another piece of bread. Old Nikias tried to convince everyone today that his donkey understands philosophy. She looks amused. And does it? The donkey appeared unconvinced. Their daughter giggles. What happened? The donkey walked away. A wise philosopher. The table erupts in quiet laughter. It is easy to imagine that ancient families spent every meal discussing politics, famous thinkers, or heroic adventures. Sometimes they probably did. Far more often, however, they talked about neighbors, children, weather, harvests, broken tools, funny moments that happened during the day. Exactly the kinds of conversations families still enjoy today. Meals nourished more than the body. They strengthened the quiet friendships that existed inside every successful household. As twilight deepens, the youngest child begins fighting an impossible battle against sleep. His head slowly lowers toward the table, then rises again, then lowers once more. His mother gently smiles. "I believe someone is losing. I'm awake." His eyes close halfway through the sentence. His father reaches over and catches the small cup before it tips onto the floor. A narrow victory. The little boy opens one eye. "I planned that." "Of course you did." The family laughs softly. Outside the courtyard walls, neighboring houses are sharing similar evenings. Somewhere another loaf is being broken. Another story is making children laugh. Another elderly grandfather is undoubtedly insisting that bread tasted much better when he was young. Every generation seems remarkably confident about this particular historical fact. The meal slowly comes to an end. She gathers the empty bowls. Before she can lift the heavier pottery, her husband quietly reaches for it. "I can carry those." "I know, but I wanted to help." She smiles warmly. "Then I won't argue." Their daughter notices. "Why do you always help Mother?" He pauses for a moment, considering the question. "Because she helps all of us." The little girl thinks carefully, then nods. "I think that's fair." Her mother reaches across the table and gently squeezes his hand. No words are needed. Sometimes gratitude arrives through the smallest gestures. The courtyard begins growing quieter. The dishes are washed. The table is cleared. The last crumbs are offered to the waiting chickens, who accept them with the enthusiasm of honored dinner guests. Above, the stars shine even brighter than before. The air has grown cooler now. He leans back, looking toward the sky. "We should eat outside more often." She laughs softly. "We eat outside every evening." "Then I believe we've made an excellent decision." She rests her head lightly against his shoulder for just a moment. The children are already chasing fireflies near the olive tree. Tomorrow they will remember the game, perhaps not the meal. Yet years from now, they may discover that what made these evenings unforgettable was never the bread or the olives. It was this feeling, the warmth of familiar voices, the comfort of sitting together after another ordinary day, the certainty that no matter how noisy the world beyond the front door became, there would always be a place waiting where laughter was shared, bread was broken, and love quietly revealed itself through the simplest acts of everyday life. The oil lamp beside the table flickers gently. One by one, the family rises. Another peaceful evening in ancient Greece slowly gives way to another peaceful night. And as the courtyard grows still beneath the stars, the house seems to breathe a quiet sigh of contentment, grateful for another day spent together. As the evening meal comes to an end, the courtyard grows wonderfully quiet once again. The children gather the last crumbs of bread for the chickens, laughing as the determined little birds rush forward with far more confidence than their size would suggest. Clay cups are stacked. The wooden table is wiped clean. Somewhere beyond the walls, another family is finishing supper beneath the very same stars. The city is slowly preparing for sleep. Yet before the final oil lamp is lowered, one last evening ritual quietly unfolds inside many Greek homes. It is not loud. There are no great processions, no magnificent temples rising around them. Instead, faith enters the home with the same gentle footsteps as every other part of ordinary life. Near one corner of the courtyard, tucked safely inside a small wall niche, stands the family's household shrine. It is simple, tiny clay figure, a shallow bowl for offerings, a little oil lamp whose flame dances softly in the evening breeze. No visitor would mistake it for one of the grand sanctuaries overlooking Athens. Yet to the family, this small corner carries enormous meaning, because this is where private hopes are quietly spoken. She approaches first. Carefully, she pours a few drops of fresh olive oil into the little bowl before lighting another wick. The tiny flame comes to life. Its warm glow spreads gently across the white wall. Her husband joins her. The children stand nearby, suddenly much quieter than they were only moments ago. Even the youngest senses that this is a moment for calm voices. No elaborate ceremony follows. Instead, they simply bow their heads. The words are soft, almost whispered, a prayer for health, for another successful harvest, for parents growing older, for children growing stronger, for peace within the household. These are not the grand ambitions of emperors. They are the quiet hopes of ordinary people. And perhaps those hopes have changed very little over the centuries. The ancient Greeks believed that the gods were woven into every part of life, not only in magnificent temples, but also in kitchens, courtyards, fields, and bedrooms. For marriage, many families looked to Hera. She was honored as the protector of marriage and family life. Her temple stood proudly across Greece, but she was also remembered in humble homes like this one, where husbands and wives quietly wished for understanding rather than perfection. Then there was Aphrodite. Today, she is often remembered only as the goddess of romance. Yet ancient Greeks understood her influence in broader ways. She represented attraction, affection, beauty, and the mysterious force that could draw two lives together. Poets wrote of her with passion. Ordinary families probably thought of her rather differently, not as the cause of dramatic adventures, but as a quiet blessing upon everyday companionship. Meanwhile, Hestia watched over something perhaps even more familiar: the hearth, the warm fire around which every family gathered. Without the hearth, there was no cooked bread, no evening meals, no comforting warmth during winter. To honor Hestia was, in many ways, to honor home itself. Even Artemis, often associated with wilderness and young women, held a special place within family life. Many women prayed to her before childbirth, asking for protection during one of life's most uncertain moments. Religion was not separate from ordinary living. It was gently woven into it, much like the threads passing through a loom. As the children wander off to prepare for bed, the husband remains beside the little shrine for another moment. His wife notices. "You stayed." "I was thinking." She walks beside him. "About what?" He watches the tiny flame dancing inside the lamp. "When we married, I prayed for a peaceful home." She smiles. "And?" He glances toward the courtyard where their children are laughing together. "I think someone was listening." She slips her hand gently into his. "I think so too." For a while, neither speaks. The silence itself feels like another kind of prayer. Above them, countless stars shine across the dark Greek sky. Ancient people knew those constellations well. Without modern lights dimming the heavens, the night sky became both a calendar and a companion. Children learned the stories hidden among the stars. Heroes, hunters, great beasts, adventures that stretched from one horizon to the other. Tonight, their little daughter points upward. "Mother, which one is my favorite?" Her mother laughs softly. "You have many favorites. The bright one." Her father pretends to think very carefully. "That certainly narrows it down." She giggles. "The one that twinkles." "They're all trying very hard tonight." The little girl sighs dramatically. "You adults make everything difficult." Her parents exchange amused glances. "We've been told." History often remembers ancient religion through enormous temples and magnificent statues. Those places were certainly important, but perhaps the truest expression of Greek belief happened here instead. Inside ordinary homes, where a father quietly thanked the gods for another safe journey through the marketplace, where a mother prayed that her children would grow up healthy, where a husband and wife hoped their home would remain filled with kindness. The great temples belonged to the city. The little shrine belonged to the family. As the evening grows later, the oil within the tiny lamp begins running low. Its flame grows smaller. She reaches forward and gently shields it from the breeze. "You always do that." He smiles. "I know. My mother used to. My father did too." She looks thoughtfully at the little flame. "Perhaps our children will someday." He nods. "I hope they remember. Not only the prayers, not only the rituals, but the feeling, the quiet peace of standing together beneath the evening sky, the comfort of believing that home itself was something worthy of gratitude." Around them, Athens settles into silence. Thousands of homes are ending their day in much the same way. Some families are wealthier. Some struggle through difficult seasons. Some celebrate the arrival of a new child. Others mourn loved ones no longer beside them. Yet beneath countless rooftops, one simple wish echoes through the night. May tomorrow bring another ordinary day, another shared meal, another peaceful evening, another chance to return safely through the same familiar wooden door. The little lamp finally gives one last gentle flicker. Its flame quietly disappears. Only the stars remain above the sleeping city, and beneath their timeless light, another night embraces the homes of ancient Greece, where faith, family, and love continue to glow long after the lamps have gone dark. The city has finally surrendered to the night. From the hills above Athens, only a handful of tiny lights still flicker behind distant windows. The noisy marketplace that bustled beneath the afternoon sun now rests in complete silence, its empty stalls standing like quiet shadows beneath the moon. Even the streets seem different after dark. Without merchants calling to customers, without children racing through the alleys, without craftsmen striking metal inside their workshops, Athens feels almost as though it has fallen under a gentle spell. Inside the little house, however, life has not quite ended. Not yet. The youngest child has somehow discovered one last burst of energy. "I don't want to sleep." His mother smiles patiently. "You said that yesterday, and I was right." "Were you?" "I stayed awake." His older sister coughs politely. "For almost 3 minutes." The little boy folds his arms dramatically. "It was at least 5. His father kneels beside him. "A mighty achievement." "I know, but tomorrow you'll need your strength again." The boy thinks very seriously about this. "To fight chickens?" His father struggles to hide a smile. "Among other important adventures." Satisfied, the little warrior finally allows himself to be tucked beneath his blanket. Within moments, he is asleep, Apparently, the chickens have agreed to postpone the battle until morning. The rest of the household moves more slowly now. Every sound becomes quieter. Clay bowls are placed neatly onto wooden shelves. The woven baskets are stacked against the wall. The last crumbs of bread disappear beneath a cloth to keep them fresh for tomorrow. She carefully pours the remaining water into a storage jar. Her husband closes the heavy wooden door leading to the street. The familiar thud echoes gently through the house. There. He brushes his hands together. The city can stay outside until sunrise. I think it will manage. I hope so. I wasn't planning to invite it inside. He smiles. I appreciate that. The courtyard grows wonderfully peaceful. Moonlight now replaces the golden warmth of the afternoon sun, washing the white walls in cool silver light. The olive tree standing quietly in the center seems almost magical beneath the stars. Its leaves shimmer whenever the breeze passes through. Nearby, the oil lamp burns with a smaller flame than before. Just enough light remains for the last conversation of the evening. She settles onto the wooden bench beneath the courtyard. He joins her. For a while, they simply listen. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays softly. Not a grand performance. Perhaps only another family ending the day much as they are. The melody rises and falls with the evening wind before slowly fading into silence. I like this time of day, she says. He nods. So do I. It feels as though the whole world is finally breathing. He looks around the quiet courtyard. I think the world talks less after sunset and listens more. He smiles. I hadn't thought of it that way. The silence between them is never uncomfortable. That is one of the quiet gifts of a long marriage. In the beginning, people often worry about finding the right words. Years later, they discover that the right silence can be just as meaningful. Ancient Greek homes were built for moments exactly like these. From the street, almost nothing could be seen. The high walls protected more than property. They protected everyday life itself. Within these walls, families laughed without an audience. Children learned from parents. Grandparents shared old stories. Couples found moments of peace after long days filled with work. Privacy was not simply a luxury. It was part of what transformed a building into a home. She looks toward the bedroom doorway where the lamp casts a warm glow onto the floor. When we first arrived here, she says quietly, I wondered whether this house would ever feel like mine. He remembers. You stood exactly there. I was frightened. I was too. She turns toward him, surprised. You never told me. I thought husbands were expected to look confident. She laughs softly. You looked confident. I was performing. She reaches for his hand. You performed very well. He squeezes her fingers gently. Thank you. The moon climbs a little higher. A cool breeze drifts through the courtyard carrying the scent of nearby fig trees and distant olive groves. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, a dog barks once before settling again. The city sleeps peacefully. History often gives us the impression that ancient people spent every waking moment worrying about wars, politics, or survival. Certainly, those things mattered, but so did evenings like this. The chance to rest aching feet, to laugh over forgotten bread, to watch children fall asleep one by one, to sit beside someone whose company required no effort at all. Perhaps happiness has always been built from ordinary evenings rather than extraordinary events. She leans back, looking toward the stars. Do you think they ever change? The stars. She nods. He studies the sky thoughtfully. I think they stay where they are. We're the ones who change beneath them. She smiles. That sounds almost philosophical. I've been spending too much time near philosophers in the marketplace. It's beginning to show. I'll be more careful. No. She gently rests her head against his shoulder. I rather like it. He smiles into the darkness. Neither notices how much time passes. There is no reason to. No clock hangs upon the wall. No alarm waits impatiently for morning. The night moves at its own gentle pace. Eventually, she stands and reaches for the oil lamp. The little flame dances one final time before she shields it carefully with her hand. Ready. He rises. I am. Together they walk toward the bedroom. The woven blanket has already been folded neatly across the wooden bed. The room still carries the familiar fragrance of cedar, olive oil, and freshly washed linen. Everything waits quietly for another night's rest. Before lowering the lamp, she glances back toward the courtyard one last time. Moonlight pours across the stone floor. The little olive tree stands peacefully beneath the stars. Tomorrow morning, sunlight will return. The children will race through the house again. The marketplace will fill with voices. Another ordinary day will begin. But for now, only silence remains. She gently lowers the flame. Darkness fills the room, soft and comforting rather than empty. Outside, the stars continue shining over Athens just as they have for countless generations. And inside one modest Greek home, another peaceful night quietly wraps itself around a family who asks for nothing more than another morning together. By now, you have spent many peaceful evenings inside an ordinary Greek home. You have watched bread being baked before sunrise. You have listened to laughter drifting across a quiet courtyard. You have followed a young couple from their wedding day to the gentle routines of married life. And perhaps, something has begun to feel surprisingly familiar. Because despite the passing of nearly 2,500 years, many of the small moments that filled an ancient Greek household still exist today. A shared smile at the end of a long day. A hand offered without being asked. A meal enjoyed together. A home slowly shaped by patience rather than perfection. Yet if you had learned about ancient Greece only through modern films or novels, you might have expected something very different. The ancient world is often imagined as a place of endless luxury, dramatic romance, and constant passion. The reality was usually much quieter. So before our journey comes to its final evening, let us gently separate a few popular myths from what historians, archaeologists, and surviving Greek writings actually suggest. Our first myth is perhaps the most famous, that every Greek home looked like a marble palace. It is an understandable mistake. The ruins we admire today are often magnificent temples, theaters, and public buildings built to impress entire cities. Ordinary houses were never meant to survive for thousands of years. Most were built from mud brick, timber, plaster, and clay roof tiles. Comfortable, practical, but far from luxurious. If you had walked through an Athenian neighborhood during the 5th century before Christ, you would have seen modest homes standing quietly beside narrow streets. Their beauty was found inside the courtyard, not on the outside walls. Our second myth tells us that ancient romance looked like the stories of the gods. Zeus transforming himself into animals. Aphrodite inspiring irresistible desire. Heroes crossing oceans for legendary beauties. Wonderful stories, but stories nonetheless. Ordinary marriages were far less dramatic. Many began through arrangements made by families. Love, when it came, often grew gradually through shared work, mutual respect, and everyday companionship. History leaves us countless tales of extraordinary passion because extraordinary stories are remembered. Quiet affection rarely makes its way into epic poetry. Yet it is likely that quiet affection filled far more homes. Another common misunderstanding concerns beauty. Modern illustrations often present every Greek woman with perfect curls, elaborate jewelry, and flowing white gowns that somehow remain spotless despite dusty streets. Real life was much more practical. Clothing reflected the family's means. Jewelry was treasured because it was valuable. Hair required regular care. And anyone walking through Athens during summer would have become just as dusty as everyone else. Olive oil, scented perfumes, and careful grooming were certainly appreciated. But beauty was not simply about appearance. Greek writers frequently praised balance, health, grace, and good character alongside physical attractiveness. Our next myth may surprise you. Many people imagine that ancient bedrooms were extravagant spaces overflowing with expensive furniture. Instead, most contained only what was truly necessary: a sturdy wooden bed, a storage chest, a few clay vessels, perhaps a bronze mirror, an oil lamp, nothing more. Yet perhaps because there was less to own, there was more room to appreciate what remained. The bedroom was not a place for displaying wealth. It was a place for resting after honest work. Then comes one of the most persistent myths of all, that ancient Greeks spent little time washing or caring for themselves. The truth is rather different. Bathing, cleaning the body, caring for the hair, and using olive oil for the skin were all well-established parts of everyday life. Cleanliness mattered, not only for appearance but also for comfort in the warm Mediterranean climate. No, they did not possess modern plumbing or scented soaps as we know them today, but they understood the simple pleasure of ending a dusty day feeling refreshed. Now let us speak about marriage itself. Some modern stories describe every ancient Greek marriage as cold and distant. Others imagine every couple as hopelessly romantic from the very beginning. Reality almost certainly existed somewhere between those extremes. Every marriage was different. Some couples undoubtedly struggled. Others built lifelong partnerships filled with quiet affection. Human nature has never fit neatly into simple categories. There were kind husbands, difficult husbands, patient wives, strong-willed wives, gentle families, complicated families, just as there are today. History rarely preserves the ordinary, preserves the unusual. That is why we often know far more about kings arguing with philosophers than neighbors sharing fresh bread beneath the evening sky. Perhaps the greatest myth of all is the belief that ancient people somehow felt less deeply than we do, as though love, grief, hope, fear, laughter, or tenderness belong mostly to the modern world. Yet every surviving letter, every family grave, every small child's toy uncovered by archaeologists quietly suggests the opposite. Parents worried, children played, friends teased one another, couples argued over ordinary things, families celebrated births, they mourned losses, they hoped tomorrow would be kinder than yesterday. The details changed, the emotions did not. Imagine for a moment walking through Athens after sunset once more. Behind one wooden door, a grandmother is telling stories to children already too sleepy to keep their eyes open. Behind another, a husband is carefully repairing a broken stool by lamplight because he promised his wife it would finally be finished before winter. Elsewhere, a young mother rocks her newborn while quietly humming a melody her own mother once sang. Across the street, two neighbors laugh together over a loaf of bread that emerged from the oven rather more burnt than intended. None of these moments appear in history books, yet together they are history, because civilizations are not built only by generals, lawmakers, and philosophers. They are built by ordinary families who wake before sunrise, work honestly, care for one another, and return home each evening hoping for another peaceful day. Perhaps that is why ancient Greece still feels strangely familiar. Not because we recognize every custom, not because we understand every belief, but because we recognize the people. The husband trying to remember the bread, the wife smiling before she hears his footsteps, the children delaying bedtime by inventing one final question, the parents quietly hoping they are doing enough, the grandparents convinced everything was somehow better years ago. Some traditions, it seems, survive every century. As the night grows deeper, the little Greek house grows quiet once again. The myths begin to fade away. What remains is something much more beautiful. Not a fantasy, not a legend. Simply the gentle truth that ordinary lives have always been worthy of remembering. And sometimes, those are the stories that stay with us the longest. The sun hangs low above the hills of Attica. Its last golden light stretches across the rooftops of Athens, turning whitewashed walls into shades of amber and honey. Long shadows drift across the narrow streets as merchants begin packing away baskets of olives, pottery, and woven cloth. Another ordinary day is coming to its peaceful end. If you stand quietly beside the doorway of our familiar little house, you can almost hear the rhythm of life slowing down. The wooden gate opens with a gentle creak. A familiar pair of footsteps crosses the courtyard. She looks up before she even sees him. After years together, she no longer needs to. She recognizes the sound of his sandals against the worn stone. He notices her waiting. "You heard me. I always do. I was hoping to surprise you. You've never managed. I remain optimistic." She laughs softly as he steps into the courtyard. The little boy races toward him at remarkable speed. "Father!" He barely has time to kneel before two small arms wrap around his neck. "What great adventure happened today?" "I climbed the olive tree." His mother's voice quickly follows. He climbed halfway. The boy sighs dramatically. The important half. His father smiles. "I believe every great climber begins there." Nearby, their daughter proudly holds up a small piece of woven cloth. "I finished this." He studies it carefully, taking far longer than necessary. "It looks excellent." She beams with pride. Children have always possessed a wonderful ability to measure love through attention. The family gathers beneath the courtyard as the evening breeze carries away the day's lingering warmth. Fresh bread is placed upon the table. A bowl of olives, goat's cheese, lentils seasoned with herbs, a handful of sweet figs waiting patiently beside a clay pitcher of watered wine. Nothing extravagant, everything enough. As they eat together, conversation wanders wherever it pleases. The children argue about whose chicken is friendlier. Her husband insists one rooster has developed an unusually serious personality. She reminds him that he has been giving names to farm animals again. "I believe Leonidas appreciates it." The rooster doesn't know he's called Leonidas. "He carries himself like a Leonidas." She smiles. "I shall take your word for it." The children burst into laughter. Somewhere beyond the courtyard wall, another family laughs at something entirely different. The sounds blend together beneath the evening sky. Athens may be one city, but tonight, thousands of little stories unfold behind thousands of little doors. After supper, The children chase one another beneath the olive tree while she gathers the empty bowls. Before she can lift the heavier pottery, her husband quietly reaches for it. "You've carried enough today. I can still manage." "I know, but I enjoy helping." She hands him the bowls. "I've learned arguing with you is usually unsuccessful." "You have. It took years. So did learning where you hide the honey." She pauses. "You knew. I've always known. And you never said anything?" "I preferred pretending it was a mystery." She laughs so warmly that even the children stop for a moment to see what caused it. As twilight settles over the house, she prepares a bronze basin with warm water. The dust of another busy day is gently washed away. A few drops of olive oil soften her skin before she slowly brushes her hair beneath the glow of an oil lamp. Nearby, her husband repairs the leather strap of one sandal. "I should have done this yesterday. You said that yesterday. And today I was finally correct. You'll make an excellent philosopher. I was hoping for craftsman. You may be both." Outside, the first stars quietly awaken overhead. The family gathers for a brief prayer beside the small household shrine. No grand ceremony, no elaborate ritual, only grateful hearts. A safe day, food upon the table, children asleep beneath the same roof. Tomorrow is uncertain. Tonight is enough. Soon the youngest begins rubbing sleepy eyes. "I am not tired." His sister smiles knowingly. "You've yawned 6 times. I was practicing." "For what?" "Sleeping." His father gently lifts him into his arms. A noble profession. Within minutes, the little boy is asleep against his shoulder. Apparently, practice makes perfect. The children are tucked beneath soft wool blankets. A quiet kiss upon each forehead. A whispered good night. The house grows wonderfully still. The courtyard belongs once more to the evening breeze. She steps outside carrying 2 small cups of watered wine. "I thought we might sit for a while. I was hoping you would." Together they settle onto the familiar wooden bench. The moon now hangs above the courtyard wall, bathing the olive tree in silver light. Neither speaks immediately. There is no need. Comfort has long since replaced the awkwardness of silence. He finally looks toward her. "Do you remember our first evening here?" She smiles. "I remember wondering whether this house would ever feel like home. And now." She glances around the peaceful courtyard. The olive tree, the woven baskets, the bedroom glowing softly beyond the doorway, the children's quiet breathing drifting through the night. "I cannot imagine another home." He reaches across the bench and gently takes her hand. "I can't either." The moment is simple. No audience applauds. No poet hides behind the doorway searching for beautiful words. History will never record it. Yet perhaps this small gesture says more about love than 100 epic romances. The oil lamp burns lower. They rise together and walk toward the bedroom. The sturdy wooden bed waits quietly beneath freshly folded linen. The bronze mirror catches the final flicker of light. A gentle breeze slips through the small window, carrying the scent of olive leaves and distant jasmine. She pauses beside the doorway. "Listen." He does. Crickets, a distant owl, the soft rustling of leaves, their children's peaceful breathing. The house sounds different at night. It sounds. He searches for the right word. "Content." She smiles. "I think so too." She lowers the wick of the lamp. The room grows dim. Moonlight now replaces the flame, spilling softly across the floor. Outside, Athens sleeps beneath an ocean of stars. Inside one ordinary home, a husband and wife lie down after another ordinary day. Not every day has been easy. Not every year has been perfect. But together they have built something stronger than either expected on their wedding night. Not a palace, not a legend, a home. And perhaps that has always been one of humanity's quietest and greatest achievements. As sleep slowly arrives, tomorrow waits patiently beyond the horizon. The bread will need baking again. The marketplace will grow busy. The children will invent fresh adventures. The rooster will almost certainly declare another unnecessary victory at sunrise. Life will continue, as it always has. And beneath the timeless stars of ancient Greece, another peaceful night gently carries an ordinary family toward another ordinary morning. A rhythm so simple, so enduring, that it still feels familiar even after more than 2,000 years. The first light of dawn has not yet reached the rooftops of Athens. The city is still asleep. The marketplace waits in silence. The olive trees stand motionless beneath a sky slowly changing from deep midnight blue to the soft gray of approaching morning. Inside the little house we have come to know so well, everything is peaceful. The oil lamp has long since gone dark. The wooden bed rests quietly in the corner of the room. The woven blankets rise and fall gently with the slow rhythm of sleeping breaths. Nothing remarkable is happening, and somehow, that is exactly what makes this moment so beautiful. Over the course of our journey, we have wandered through the hidden world that existed behind thousands of ordinary Greek doors. Not the Greece of marble temples alone, not the Greece of famous philosophers or victorious generals, but the Greece that most people actually knew. The Greece of families, of neighbors, of quiet evenings, of lives built one ordinary day at a time. We watch children grow beneath the careful eyes of loving parents. We stood beside two families as they prepared a marriage not with dramatic romance, but with hope for a stable and happy future. We walked beneath torchlight on a wedding evening, following two young people as they stepped together into an unfamiliar home. We entered their modest bedroom, discovering that its greatest luxury was never expensive furniture, but the peace found within its walls. We shared their evening meals, listened to their gentle laughter, watched them welcome a child into the world, sat beside them beneath countless starlit skies while the sounds of Athens slowly faded into silence. Along the way, we discovered something quietly surprising. The ancient Greeks were not so different from us. Their clothes looked different. Their houses were built differently. Their customs, beliefs, and daily routines belonged to another age. Yet beneath all those differences lived hearts remarkably familiar. A husband returning home after a long day's work still looked forward to seeing the person waiting behind the door. A wife still found comfort in hearing familiar footsteps crossing the courtyard. Parents still worried when children became ill. Children still delayed bedtime with one final question. Neighbors still shared food during difficult seasons. Grandparents still told the same stories often enough that younger listeners could almost recite them from memory. Some traditions seem wonderfully determined to survive every century. Perhaps history sometimes feels distant because we spend so much time studying extraordinary people. Kings, queens, conquerors, great thinkers, they deserve to be remembered. But civilizations are sustained by ordinary people whose names history rarely records. The woman who rises before sunrise to bake bread. The craftsman repairing a neighbor's chair. The farmer tending his olive trees. The mother teaching her daughter to weave. The father lifting a sleepy child into his arms after supper. Without them, there would have been no ancient Greece. Archaeologists often uncover small objects that never appear in textbooks. A child's toy carved from wood, a bronze hairpin, a cracked clay cup repaired rather than thrown away, a worn cooking pot blackened by countless evenings beside the fire. These humble discoveries rarely attract the same attention as golden statues or magnificent temples. Yet they whisper something deeply important. Someone lived here. Someone laughed here. Someone celebrated birthdays, weddings, and harvests here. Someone sat beneath these same stars wondering what tomorrow might bring. History, at its heart, is not made of ruins. It is made of people. As the first birds begin greeting the approaching dawn, our little household slowly prepares to wake once again. The youngest child stirs first, stretching beneath his blanket before deciding that perhaps 5 more minutes of sleep is a magnificent idea. His sister quietly opens one eye, already wondering whether today's adventures will involve climbing the olive tree again. In the bedroom, she slowly awakens as the first pale light slips through the small window. Beside her, her husband is still asleep. For a moment, she simply watches him. The years have left their quiet marks upon both of them. A few more lines around the eyes. Hands made stronger by honest work. Hair touched gently by time. Yet she smiles. Not because everything has been easy, but because they have faced those years together. Outside, a rooster proudly announces the arrival of morning with all the confidence of a creature convinced the sun rises entirely because of his personal efforts. Her husband opens one eye. There he is again. She laughs softly. I believe he's become even louder. I was afraid you would say that. One day you'll have to admit he wins. I shall never surrender. Some battles, it seems, are destined to continue forever. The children soon come running into the courtyard. The house fills once more with footsteps, laughter, and cheerful conversation. Bread is prepared. Water is carried. Another ordinary day quietly begins. And that is where we leave them. Not during a grand celebration. Not at the end of an unforgettable adventure. Simply in the middle of life. Because that is where most real stories are lived. Perhaps somewhere beyond the reach of history, they continued growing older together. Perhaps they welcomed grandchildren into the same courtyard. Perhaps their children built homes nearby, filling the neighborhood with familiar voices. We cannot know for certain. History is generous in many ways, but it also leaves room for imagination. What we do know is this. Across ancient Greece, thousands upon thousands of families greeted each sunrise with the same quiet hopes. To work honestly, to return home safely, to care for one another, to share another meal, to laugh a little, to worry a little, to love as best they could. And when evening finally arrived once again, to close the wooden door against the busy world outside, to light a small oil lamp, to gather the people they loved beneath one roof, and to find, in those simple moments, a kind of happiness that no empire could ever build. So, as our own journey gently comes to its end, let the sounds of that ancient home fade softly into the distance. The laughter of children playing beneath the olive tree. The quiet conversation of husband and wife at day's end. The gentle crackle of the hearth. The song of crickets beneath a sky overflowing with stars. The slow whisper of the evening breeze moving through the courtyard. These are the sounds that rarely survive in history. Yet they may have been the soundtrack of ancient Greece itself. Thank you for walking these quiet streets with me. Thank you for stepping behind those modest wooden doors and discovering that history is not only found in monuments, but also in ordinary lives lived with kindness, patience, and hope. Now, the oil lamp has gone out. The courtyard is still. The stars slowly give way to the morning sun. And somewhere, in an ordinary Greek home more than 2,000 years ago, another peaceful day is just beginning. Sleep well,